Maryland. So y'all just bear with me.
We thank you for your service, and you're doing your part right there with your grandchildren. And we thank you.
Absolutely.
For us to know and reflecting. And now as we move on to Marcus McAllister, he's coming to us with Community Violence Intervention, or initial CVI. Your own, Marcus.
Good evening, everybody. How is everybody doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for coming, Brother Marcus. I know you, so this brother's on the move all the time. I just really quickly, he is, for number one, not only is he an expert, he is one of our, what we call TAs, or technical assistants. He's an expert in community violence intervention. He develops programs. I'm gonna let him give his intro, but I just really appreciate this brother. He's very sincere. Matter of fact, he's gonna, well, I'm gonna just say he's actually recently been ordained too. So he's amongst the clergy too. So this brother has done a lot. I feel like he's very, very sincere. Every time I talk to him, heart recognizes the heart, and I appreciate this brother. And but he's definitely an expert, not nationally but internationally. So go ahead, brother.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And once again, good evening, everybody. Glad to join you all. I'm actually right now, I am in Florida. I've been working with Faith in Florida all week. I got here on Monday. And so I've been up and down the Florida coast, visiting with quite a few people in different groups of the Faith in Florida group, as they galvanize themselves and trying to put pressure on some of these city councils. We were in West Palm Beach today, actually Riviera Beach, where I was with Pastor Drayton, and was out there with him, and then Dr. Jackson and the others that are here. I'm in Miami Gardens right now. I got to leave here at 5 in the morning. I head back to Chicago. I'm based in Chicagoland. I stay in the northern suburbs of Chicago. And as my brother was mentioning, I've been involved in community violence intervention now for about 18, 19 years, going on 19 now. I was, when I was 18, I was incarcerated, did about 10 years incarceration. My grandfather was a pastor. He was a pastor in Church of God in Christ. I'm an associate pastor at a church in the northern suburbs of Jesus Name Apostolic Church. But when I came home, I wanted to come back and be around my grandfather before he passed. And I was, just getting acclimated back in the community. And this was about 19 years ago. And I came across this organization that treated violence from a health lens. They weren't really looking at it from a criminal justice lens. And this is before all the CVI stuff, before all this ARPA dollars. So for me, when I see the investment of CVI now, it's like blows my mind, because I come from an era when we were just happy to, if we got 300,000, we were doing something, and we were fighting. I think 6 million was the most we ever got for like 16 groups throughout Chicago. And because it wasn't really something that was being invested in. But over time, we showed tremendous success. We had reductions in violence in 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%. And we still had to fight for funding. Even though we showed that this approach works, we had evaluations that were done that showed that it works. And then we even had a documentary that came out that highlighted the work. It was a national documentary called The Interrupters that it took first place at the Sundance Film Festival, and it kind of spotlighted the work. So when that documentary came out, a big portion of the country were interested, and they said, well, they wanted to know what this work was. And this was back around 2006. And this is when I spent 18 or 19 of those years working for an organization called Cure Violence. It's called Cure Violence Global. Just recently of December of 2020, myself and Cure Violence, we went our separate ways, and I started my own consulting and training company. I built a lot of relationships, and one of my favorite and best groups that I work with, who immediately reached out to me, was Pastor McBride. He knew my work. He knew that I was capable of doing the stuff that I was doing, and so he asked me would I come on with Live Free and be their community violence intervention strategist or specialist. And I was honored, because obviously I have a lot of love for Pastor McBride, and it was a faith-based work. I was just very interested. So I joined them, and in the process of joining them, I've also continued to provide TA and training. I'm here, as I mentioned, here with Faith in Florida, providing some TA and a little light going over some proposals that they're submitting the various groups. But I also work in Houston, work in Virginia, As he mentioned, I worked in other countries, South Africa, worked in Trinidad, Belize, and I spent some time over in Jerusalem, and was over there doing some violence prevention work in the Holy Land, which was an honor for me to be able to go there as well. But God is good, so I've been working with my brother, and it's been an honor. I really love Faith in Action. I love Live Free because it's a different group that I'm normally not had the opportunity to work with when it comes to gun violence prevention. And so I've been honored to kind of shed a little light, much as I can, help out wherever I can, and to get into like CVI. That the word CVI, the government uses that now. That's like the big umbrella name, Community Violence Intervention. And so it's a popular name now. You see the president mention it, and it came out with all these different funding issues. But underneath CVI, there's really three main pieces of CVI. Now, there's a lot of pieces, but the three biggest pieces are, one of them is called street intervention. And underneath street intervention, there's a couple popular street intervention groups that are real well branded. One of them is Cure Violence, my previous employer. And then there's another one, Advanced Peace, which is out of the Oakland area. They do good work. And then there's a lot of more. There's a program in New York, CMS, and they all fall under street intervention. And then even now today, myself, I fall under street intervention. I have my own training and curriculum to address street intervention work. And then you have GVI, which is another form of street intervention, but it's, how do I say this? So it's highly, if it's not done correctly, it can be looked at as being highly connected to law enforcement. Some people in the country have gotten GVI right. It's not a lot, but some have gotten it right. And some haven't quite got it right, but nevertheless, it falls underneath the word underneath CVI. And the third so back to that GVI. So some examples of GVI would be this organization called NIC Jr. They're like the National Institute of Criminal Justice Reform. A gentleman by the name of David Muhammad is their founder. And so that's one example of GVI work. There's another work called Ceasefire. That's the one that's kind of more closer to David Kennedy model, which, I'm not a big fan of it whatsoever, because it's, I look at it as a focus deterrent model, but, it's a suppression model as far as I'm concerned. But nevertheless, it's a model, it's being used. And so it's part of that network. And the last one is the HVIP, that's the Hospital Violence Intervention Programs. And there's quite a few of those in the country as well that are, he mentioned Birmingham. Obviously, I have added that component to recently to some funding, but actually Birmingham is doing a hybrid. So they're not just doing the hospital piece, they're going to have the community piece as well, which I was happy to hear that, because hospital violence and intervention programs are okay, but they're better when you connect the community to it. So when you have a hospital program and you have boots on the ground and they work together, then that's the best type of hospital program. Hospital program on its own is okay, but they're limited. It's not like they're out in the community or come out that hospital. So out of those three different main prongs of CVI, I'm not just saying this because I worked for one of the ones I mentioned, but by far, street intervention has the best results across the country. It's not even close, they have the most evaluations. I like it because it's core in the community. And I like it because it gives an opportunity to hire and train individuals similar to myself. I mentioned that I did the time I came home and was looking for something, and this work found me. And so I was what you call a violence interrupter. I was able to mediate a lot of conflict in my neighborhood because, the way we train and teach in street intervention is trying to find people that have credibility, not stealing their life. We're not trying to hire somebody that's still out here doing crazy stuff, but we want to hire people that are real relatable, lived experience, understand, because they can get in where others can't. They have a keen sense to what's going on in the streets. They're not police. They're not the neighborhood watch. They're not the guardian angels. I got to be clear on that. These are street intervention individuals that are trained to be able to mediate conflict. They're trained to put out fires that no one even knows they're putting out, because they're trained in doing role plays and what situations should you pay attention to when you're trying. And that's why it's so effective, because so much happens in a neighborhood. So the question I've been posing with a lot of the organizers here in Florida. And I would ask everybody on this call here, just to bring it to perspective, if I was to ask everybody here in this Zoom, do you all believe that disrespect gets people killed in different cities in the country, in the neighborhood? Just disrespect by itself. Would everybody agree that disrespect has gotten people killed and shot and stuff in the neighborhoods? Okay, so I would assume that most people agree with that. And then my second question would be, is disrespect against the law? Well, I know the answer already, so it's a rhetorical question. The answer, of course, disrespect is not against the law. So if it's not against the law, and we all agree that disrespect can get people killed, who's going to police disrespect? And the only people that can police disrespect is when you put together a community street team that's able to pay attention to a variety of disrespects that happen in the community. See, we're trying to stop violence on the front end. We want to stop the little fire before it becomes a forest fire. And if no one's paying attention to all the nuances that happen that lead to gun violence, then that's how things start off as a small fire that becomes a forest fire, or it starts off as like I like to use the analogy of what's going on right now with COVID and all of that. That really opened up to how we see violence as a disease. I mean, you cough on somebody, then they go cough on somebody before you know it, it's a pandemic. It's the same thing with violence. It starts off with a disrespect, then they disrespect again, and these youngsters doing stuff on social media, and all of that stuff leads to other people being infected. And a lot of times, you can get somebody, you can have young, and I'm speaking like young people, because they really are the men in the country. Everybody can be violent, but they make up the strongest portion of gun victims in this country, as far as the recipients of gun violence and also the perpetrators. And we're talking about anywhere from the age of 15 to 27, prime age, number one age in this country as far as violence incidents occurring. And so a lot of times, you can come back and you can affect your friends because you tell them about something that went wrong, and they don't even have to know somebody, but they don't like that individual, or when they see them, as they do in some of these cities, it's on site. They want to get some retaliation and whatnot. And so I worked on the ground for about 7 years, and I trained for about 11. I was the national director of training, and I've seen the effect of street intervention. If you do it right, it's tremendous. I went to South Africa, and I also went to Trinidad, which is much rougher than Chicago, much rougher than Brooklyn, Bronx, all the places that we consider to be rough neighborhoods or communities. And they applied this work and they saw tremendous reduction. There's some evaluations on it too out there, but and what we did was we found people that were from the community in South Africa that had relationships. We found people that were from the community in Trinidad that had relationships. I launched a site in New Orleans. We went to the 3rd Ward in New Orleans. We interviewed a bunch of guys and sisters, because it's a lot of women in this work too, that are out there as mediators and outreach workers. Now, that's just the core of street intervention. But by itself, no one can get it done by themselves. That's why we like to plug in all the wraparound services. You need your trauma-informed care. You need your hospital program. You need some of these organizations that are able to do work in the school. You need also the survivor network. So there's so many groups that mothers and fathers that have lost children to violence, they play a vital role. So now you need jobs and resources. Those are what we call all the wraparound services that can make a street team go from just being an average street team to being a real great street team, because they have a holistic approach. They have all the comprehensive services behind them, and they're able to be so much more effective in putting out fires, as I mentioned early on, and mediating conflict. So that is kind of the core of CVI. And so I tell you what's happening in this country now. A lot of money came out, the ARPA dollars, and people are applying for it. I went on a fun peace tour where we were going from city to city. I actually went to Birmingham. We did a press conference in Birmingham when we were pushing for the city council there and the mayor there to invest some money in community violence intervention. But what's happening in the country, now that this has become such a hot topic, now that there's so much money being poured into it, everybody is trying to say they're doing CVI. So we're gonna wash cars, and that's CVI. We washing them in the neighborhood. We're gonna clean up the streets. And I'm not saying these things are not good, but it's like those are good things, but they're not intervention. That's just good things for prevention, and you need prevention. But the number one thing you need is some type of intervention to be able to have a team that's going to do things that the average person is not going to do, these teams work late hours because they have to be abreast to be able to try to stop somebody who's upset and want to go do something and talk that person down. These street intervention teams, they don't have a bulletproof vest, they don't have a gun, they're not law enforcement, but what they do have is their credibility and the ability to talk somebody down. They are the ultimate mentor because they themselves know what it's like. A lot of the population that's doing this work, I mean, there's about 70 CVI programs in the country that I know of, because I've been very blessed and fortunate to launch about 50 of them, but it's about 70 all throughout the country. And I just been naming a few. They have their different names. In Kansas City, they got Aim for Peace. In Baltimore, they have Safe Streets. In New Orleans, they call themselves Ceasefire New Orleans, and then they changed their name to Cure Violence New Orleans, and then they changed it again. So people, they come with these different names. In Nashville, Tennessee, the group is called Gideon's Army. In Memphis, they're trying to get a program going. It's called Memphis Artists for Change. But these are just community-based organizations that are concerned about violence in their community. Now, when I was a program manager, we ran my program through my church. So my pastor, when we got funding, we had a non-for-profit called Family First Center. And so we actually ran it through my church, but the staff, we didn't say, okay, it's ran through my church. My whole violence intervention team have to be from church. They got to be Christians. And that wasn't the case, but we just ran it through the church. I was the program manager. We put a call out in the neighborhood to try to find the right individuals. We hired a team and we did good work. I could think of over my 18 years, we probably had about 5 or 6 churches adapt this model. Directly a church did it. When I was in Birmingham, I know they just got an RFP went out, and I think the group that got it is called the Alumni Offenders Association. Dr. Daniels, I think her name, I've met her once when I was in Atlanta, but they got the funding. But I know the pastors down there, they were trying to fight the peacekeepers down there, and we were trying to help them out to see if they would have been the one chosen. They weren't chosen, this other group was chosen. And so, we got to move on, and it's all about violence prevention, because, this work is not a lick, it's not a come up. It's really just, just trying to get the work done. And so the more the merrier that's able to do the work and don't mind being involved in community violence intervention. But it's a great work. I tell you, and I say this too, and I'll end after this. I will say this, that stopping violence and having a community violence intervention team, I think is great. But what I really fell in love with over the work was the fact that we were changing a workforce. Like, we were hiring individuals and changing their lives. So their lives were changed because they saw themselves in a better light now. They were peacemakers now, right? They were able to change their life. They had a lot of them had backgrounds and stuff, but hey, we were showing the country that just because we've been to jail, you've been incarcerated, there's some greatness that you can use in people that have been through something, and they don't necessarily have to go to McDonald's and do all this. No, we working to save lives, just like a doctor does, a nurse does. And it's taken, as I said, it's taken me quite a long way. And obviously I know my source comes from God without a doubt, but this vessel right here has really opened up a lot of doors that I've never thought that I would be doing. I never thought I would be a trainer. I never thought I'd be traveling to these places that I mentioned to you all. And so it's been humbling. It's still humbling today. And I'm just overwhelmed with what God has been doing in this work, specifically myself. And I'm just honored. And so I'll leave it at that, because I could just go. And I'd rather open it up if anyone has any specific questions. But I appreciate you guys, and God bless.
Thank you so much. You're right in time point that we had planned, and your work is such a blessed work, and we're going to keep you in mind. We do have time for a couple of questions. I asked for it to be typed in the chat, but if anybody has 1 or 2 questions, because we do have a great person waiting in the wing to talk about voter rights restoration. So please ask now. I think you answered the one I want to know. How do you reach the people to come be a part of your outreach interventions like you did? Like, you went to South Africa and probably didn't know anybody. So how were you able to go there and find the people?
That's a great question. Well, that's why this work is mostly always connected to some type of community-based organization. They have to find the people. It's not nothing you just put in the paper looking for a violence interrupter. It's kind of word of mouth. It's like the tribe. People are saying, hey, my nephew, I think he'll be good for that. I remember I went to Atlanta and we were launching this program in Atlanta, and I was up at a park and I did a presentation, and like 5, 6 community members said, hey, you got to go talk to Dip. I think Dip would be perfect for this. And to this day now, Dip, that's his nickname. He is working for the team in Atlanta, and Dip is excellent. They know who's the type that can do this in these cities and countries. But yeah, I didn't know him. I come to train them and also sit on some panels to help them, but they have to identify because they know their neighborhood is better, obviously, than me if I don't live there.
Yeah, and if I could just interject, one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring Brother Marcus on is that he can show that the community portion is an important component, but those concerned community members and those clergy who go out and establish relationships is one thing, but you need. We advocate for a publicly funded program that actually hires people. And again, reason why we want to do the hospital linked violence interruption program, so they can hire those people if they might have a kind of a checker pass. Those people who are have been can relate to the community. They can hire them. They're full time to get trained, and that's what they do. It's not like a side thing. And so, and there you have the experts like Brother Marcus to train them, and leverage that credibility that they already had, So, but I just think the comprehensive approach is really, really important. So, and that's what we advocate for. Like Peacemakers, Faith in Action, whatever funding we are advocating for, none of it comes to us. We want the resources that are there, that are available to go to the community and go to those people who are going to be in the community doing the work. And that's what we push them for. So,
yeah. Thank you, Brother Marcus, Minister Marcus, for that wonderful presentation. Yeah, my question is, I saw that you've traveled internationally, just like Mr. Muaath said. Your trip to Jerusalem, was it also for the training purposes, or was it just for the meeting, or what was it exactly that you had to go to Jerusalem?
Great question. So because I also went to Palestine first, and Ramallah and Samaria, and then I was having several meetings over there as they were trying to figure out if this thing would be applicable to their area in certain ways. Now we know it's a whole different type of violence going on there, but you know what? They were able to enter. I didn't do the training because of but we had a trainer over there that came to the States, learned a little bit about what we did, and he went back over there and trained. But my initial visit there was really just a bunch of meetings. We had a bunch of meetings. We went to Tel Aviv and met with some different people, and we went to Jerusalem and just variety of spots. And it was just an honor because, hey, I got a chance to go visit Jesus' tomb and Garden of Gethsemane, and that blew my mind. So, I was supposed to be over there for work, but I was over there like, hey, this is the Holy Land. I want to learn as much as I can while I'm in this presence of where history took place,
All right, that's good. I'm impressed. I was there for 2 weeks too, so I'm impressed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much, brother.
Thank you. No problem. Anytime. I'm sorry. I was waiting if there are any more questions. I got to run because we're finishing up the last little meeting here in Florida, and I'm going to catch this flight in the morning. But God bless. If I could be of any help, I'm on board. I've been talking with Oli Emmy. I talked to her yesterday, so she's trying to get me to be able to make some rounds where I come down there on behalf of Live Free and get a chance to visit as many people as I can, and just however I can be helpful. So thank you so much, and thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you. Yeah.
God bless y'all.
Thanks a lot, brother. And we'll definitely. He's been in contact with our director of OVP, who's on brother Keith Moore, Bishop Keith Moore, also. So yes, we're gonna definitely utilize him. So you have a good one, man, and be safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right,
now we have Sherry Lewis from the Birmingham Hub of Faith in Action. She will bring us an update and a call to action for the voting rights restoration team of Faith in Action. Sherry Lewis.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you. The